Copy and pasta. Working with the same author as on Juliet's recipes, copy and pasta is the sort of antithesis to Juliet's recipes. Most recipe websites are usually heavy with pictures, text, searches, logic, and descriptions, and Juliet's recipes is an example of that. For copy and pasta, however, the inspiration was to go back to the very simple cookbooks of the 1950s and 60s, targeted towards somebody who is well familiar with cooking and is simply looking for new recipe ideas. Recipes were presented in collection-style cookbooks, in which a single recipe does not take up an entire page, but recipes are rather categorized and displayed together, which makes it very easy to glance over a number of recipes and scan them for ingredients, time, serving size, etc. Flipping through a recipe book of that style is a decidedly different experience than more modern styles, in which recipes are indexed, pictured, and the instructions hold your hand all the way through. Design goals. This lends itself to a style of website that is not broken up into individual pages, but presents the content right away in a very linear, collected fashion. Copy is not just a word meaning duplication, but it also refers to the main body of a text in a book, brochure, or just about any designed medium. For copy and pasta, copy is just as much name as it is program. The website is based purely on typography, without any images or color. As the element carrying the visual identity, I needed a typeface which, similar to the Julie typeface on Juliet's recipes, had a lot more personality than your average Arials and Helveticas, but one that didn't draw a lot of attention to itself. Since the website is based on older, less modern typography, I also found that the grotesque and American Gothic-inspired model would be the most appropriate. The result is based on the reworking of one of my own grotesques, Julie, or Yuli, by adapting the shapes and increasing the contrast, the difference in stroke width between the horizontal and vertical lines. This is especially prominent in the book in bold weights and gives it a really posh, elegant edge. Since this typeface is based on Yuli, I aptly named it Yulai. The structure of the website is defined by categories, and so the only real navigational element serves to display recipes in their respective categories. Because of this style, Copy and Pasta is a venture into an Ajax single-page web app style website, in which the user requests content not through individual page loads, but rather JavaScript-based updates to the existing page. The biggest challenge when building any sort of single-page website is of course navigation. Since the back button is the single most used navigational element of any website, pulling in content after the page has been loaded represents a problem. For example, if the user came from a search engine, and then clicked the link that delivered content via Ajax, pressing the back button would take the user back to the search engine, not what we want. Maintaining this back button functionality was done by making use of the fact that adding hashes to a URL creates an entry in the browser's history, and therefore can be accessed via the back and forward buttons, and can even be bookmarked. In Copy and Pasta, when a dynamic link is clicked, I only change the URL. As the hash in the URL changes, JavaScript parses the URL and then takes the appropriate action, making Ajax calls to display or hide content, and even taking care not to execute the same thing twice. With that, the user can interact with a single page, go forward, go backwards, as he would if the website was broken up into different pages, even though it is not. Each recipe is stored individually in a MySQL database and, based on categories parsed from the URL, is then built dynamically into the page demanded by the user. The list of categories in each recipe is clickable as a link, so the user can display more recipes from that category. I needed to think about what happens if a user does not have JavaScript enabled. In fact, actually the first step was to write the fallback version of the website. If no JavaScript is enabled, Copy and Pasta functions as a standard HTML PHP-based website, with the server querying a database and building individual web pages, delivering them as static HTML. It is only when JavaScript is enabled that the website's code is modified to work as an Ajax application. The beauty of this is twofold. First, most of the work on the Ajax version is already done, since we can very easily modify the existing PHP code serving HTML to instead serve up JSON, which is then very easily parsed in our Ajax calls. Second, having a completely functional backup is also useful for search engines. Search engines can actually crawl our website and its contents and see exactly the same thing a user sees via Ajax. Backend. Since the website is written in PHP and uses a MySQL database, there is also a clever, simple content management system backend to the site that allows authors to quickly add, edit, or delete recipes without ever having to go into the code or mess with up and downloads. Following a few simple style guidelines, adding recipes is super easy, something the author of the recipes specifically commented on. This is largely because the CMS backend automatically formats all entries to be displayed correctly as recipes.